Hi, you guys. This is Richard Sachs. I'm your host on Lost Arts Radio. Nice to be with you again. Thanks for sharing your time with us. I appreciate it. And as some of you may have known, if you followed the links from YouTube and managed to actually get here, you know that we tracked down Kerri Rivera to find out what was so terrible that she became a very popular removed video of ours on YouTube recently. And we thought the best response to that would, of course, be to have her back and go into much more detail. So I'm anxious to find out where this all came from. And I think before we get into the nature and depth and detail of the current attempts to shut her down and silence the message, I'd like to give a little bit of background on her that we didn't last time. And since it's clear that the authorities in government and corporations agree that her information is very valuable, or they wouldn't be shutting her down, we should agree with them and give her more background. So, Kerri, thanks for being here. And what I'd like to do, if it's okay with you, is to go back to before you knew what an MMS was and, you know, any of this stuff and what came together, obviously not by chance, to bring you into the middle of all this stuff from somebody who wasn't aware of it in the beginning.
Well, yeah, sure. I was. My son was diagnosed with autism, and I went through a sort of 6-year period where I was hunting and looking and trying and doing all kinds of biomedical interventions that cost about $500,000, maybe a little bit more than that, over that period of time, with very limited results. You know, diet was important. We got some speech back with hyperbarics, and nothing else was really anything. And then I prayed one day because I really didn't know anymore. There was nothing left to try. I'd tried it all.
Yeah.
And then, I mean, again, it wasn't like a miracle moment where like God whispered to me, get the stuff out of the drawer. You know, it wasn't like that. But it was that I had bought this chlorine dioxide a year prior and to try it. And at that point, the father of my son and I, we talked about doing it, and we tried it ourselves, and then we tried it with him, and it was almost miraculous at full dose how well he was and how changed he was for the first time since he had gotten...
Where did you even hear about chlorine dioxide? I mean, you didn't walk into Walgreens and buy it.
No, I was actually at a pediatrician's office in Guadalajara, Mexico, which is nearby where we live, and right. I went to see this pediatrician who was doing IV chelation on kids there. And a nurse walked in with a box of these beautiful blue and like emerald green bottles, the activator and the sodium chloride. And I said, what are those? And he said, those are detoxification drops. I said, I'll take some of those. But I didn't do anything with them. That was 2009. I didn't do anything with them that year. They stayed in my library for a year with the heat and everything of Mexico. And then 2010, when I had the prayed and anyway that I thought about the drops, then I activated them and they actually worked. Still.
What's the shelf life on those, by the way, since you bring
years? There's kind of nothing really. And they were stored, they weren't even stored in like a dark environment. They were just, they were dark. They were like a cabinet, but they were still in a very hot place.
Okay, interesting. So what was the trigger that made you finally try it?
I started to research. Then I started to really research. Like I never looked into it before, and I started to research it for virus, for bacteria, for candida, for parasites, for heavy metals, for inflammation, for oxidative stress, and it was like takes care of all those things. I'm like, well, what are we waiting for, right? It's the holy grail to autism recovery. And then, of course, the question was like, well, is it dangerous? How do you feel?
Sure.
So the father and I started to try it ourselves, and yeah, you're fine. We figure we don't die. It's got to be pretty good, and then no deaths associated with it. So we try it.
And what stage was your son at that time? I'm trying to just keep it in.
It wasn't too good. He had some words. He had some basic words like I want chicken, or I want take walk, or I want that kind of thing. But it was not like the eye contact was terrible. The sleep was still sometimes yes, sometimes no.
How old was he?
He was going to be 10, right? He turned 10 on the 12th of August, and on the 17th of August, we started with 1 drop.
Okay, so 10 years old with not much improvement. That's from the conventional point.
It was better, but it was not like so great, It was still
that would be expected to be not able to get any better at that point after 10 years, I would think.
I just taped an interview yesterday with a mother of a 23-year-old recovery. He's 20. Yeah, and he was in the video too. So that's really cool. Wow. And if anybody wants it, I'll send it to you. Kerri@realkerririvera.com. Happy to send you the link. But anyway,
yeah, please.
There's no age problem. It's just a matter of when the body needs to be healed, if you give it the right tools, it will heal.
Right. Okay. So you decided to try it. Why don't you give us some picture of what that was like right at that time and what happened, if you can kind of relive it?
Sure. So I contacted Jim Humble via email, and I asked him, what would be the dosing for a child? Because there was nobody using it for autism, and there's nobody really using it for children at this point. So I couldn't find any dosing for kids or for autism. So he finally said, 1 drop 8 times a day for 25 pounds, 2 drops 8 times a day for 50 pounds, and 3 drops 8 times a day for 100 pounds. So my son was 100 pounds, and we went from 1 drop twice a day to 3 drops 8 times. And in any protocol where you're detoxifying, there can be vomiting, there can be loose stool, there can be different things. And those are Herxheimer reactions. So but mid-afternoon, he projectile vomited, and I said, okay, that's enough for that for the day. We got to figure out how we're going to do this properly, because nobody's done it before.
So this is one of the first things that the television people and the medical authorities and the government authorities would say, aha, signs of poisoning. You're obviously using bleach and killing your own child, and you're crazy. So if for people that, they just saw that on TV and they said, well, yeah, it must be true. Look at all these bad things happening. How do you understand that?
Well, I'd love to send them to the foodsafetymagazine.com 2005 February-March edition. Chlorine dioxide, quote unquote, unlike bleach, which makes trihalomethanes, chlorine dioxide donates oxygen breaking down into water, oxygen, and table salt, unquote. They're not the same thing. They don't function the same way. So anyway, and of course, we were already convinced of that. I spent a lot of time reading before we did anything. There was definitely at least a month worth of just reading and looking and buying the books and everything and understanding what was going on. So, but that evening of that vomiting, the evening, my son turned to me and told me, I want bed, which is something he never said before in his life. He could say, I want something, but it would be something not bed, and he could stand there flapping in front of a TV at that point still, until 2 a.m. if we didn't say it's time to go to bed. Right. We got upstairs and he said, I want to take bath. Again, something he would never say to do, even though he enjoyed it. And then he was like looking me in the eye and giggling and soaping up and really happy. And when I peeled the towel back, his eyes met my eyes like the first time in 8 years. So it was a really big moment. And still, all those doctors tried to convince him my son was a non-responder. And it was kind of like he was so broken that he just couldn't respond to their magic, right? But it wasn't the case. It was the wrong, they weren't going about. And one of the things that these biomedical doctors are doing is they're going about treating autism as like, oh, you need more magnesium because the lab says you need more. I mean, it's all about supplementing, but they never get rid of the pathogens, which is causing the oxidative stress and the inflammation. And so once you do that, the person starts to evolve very quickly out of autism. Actually, the first 3 to 6 months were dramatic. I mean, really, really dramatic. As to the improvements that my son had. But then talk about the other tens of thousands of kids now that have done the chlorine dioxide protocol. I mean, there's more than 555 recoveries. And then there's tens of thousands that are better. And they're from ages, anywhere between 18 months and 32 years old that have lost their diagnosis. So, and like I said, I did an interview today with Dr. Stephanie Seneff, which I would also, if anybody wants it, I'm happy to send them the link, Carrie@realcarriervera.com. But the FDA and the EPA in 2005 were saying an excellent choice for food processing. It's in all kinds of things, and CD has passed the EPA's stringent guidelines. These are all quotes from this article. Chlorine dioxide has 2.6 times more oxidizing power than chlorine, bleach, sodium hypochlorite as a biocidal. And in 30 minutes, it destroys bacteria and biofilms.
Okay, so now how can it do that and not be toxic? Because people think, okay, chlorine, twice as strong chlorine, that sounds really horrible. So what's the difference? It has
the more oxidizing power. So the power of oxidation is how it kills. It kills through oxidation, so it cannot harm healthy cells. It's only going to destroy the toxins because it's a positively charged molecule, and our healthy cells are positively charged as well. So they repel each other.
Okay, yeah, because I know one of the so-called alternative or more natural treatments for cancer is they put hydrogen peroxide in your veins. And it's for the same reason, I think. But they have some problems with that because it can have some corrosive effects as well.
Right, but it's 2.06 or 2.03 is its voltage, as a pro-oxidant. And chlorine dioxide is 0.95, and the body is around 1.28. So that's the problem with hydrogen peroxide, and even ozone is somewhere around 1.8 something. So they're really high up, and that's why ozone can work, but it has to be controlled. Hydrogen peroxide is even higher than ozone, and that's why chlorine dioxide is perfect. It's higher than pathogens, but lower than the body, so it cannot harm the body. I know somebody's child that's on it for 10 years and totally recovered. But, just because of living in Venezuela and everything, that they have some toxins, and she's just afraid that something will happen while the, country is in the state that it's in. But 10 years, or almost, 9.5 years.
So when you were initially trying to figure out if there was any harmful aspect at all, or anybody had ever been hurt in any way, what did you find out?
Well, actually, I was talking with Dr. Seneff about that, and one of these, fake news media people from NBC, this Brandy Zadrozny or something like this. Anyway, it's all fake. So she says, there's been 3 harms according to this FAERS, FDA Adverse Event Reporting System. And when Dr. Seneff went into the system to find these, there were supposedly 3. One was a case of kidney cancer dying from chemotherapy. The second was supposedly a 6-year-old girl who was harmed. Of course, there was no case there. And number 3, there was no number 3. So, and then of course she went in and she just looked up some drugs that they typically give kids with autism, like Abilify. And there was almost 300 deaths. There were seizures. There was hospitalizations. There, all that hallucinogen. And then there was, I forget, almost 90,000 adverse effects from Tylenol. So chlorine dioxide is really, and that was with MMS. When they looked up MMS, when they looked at chlorine dioxide, there were 0. When they looked at MMS, there were the 3 that were supposedly found by this NBC person.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Wow. Amazing. Okay, so the improvement started shortly after you started with the treatment on your son, right?
Right.
And how far did that go, and what were the stages?
It went far, to the point where, at this stage, there's able to speak. I mean, I don't want to get into my son's case due to problems with my ex-husband, but there's my son has several languages, kind of, friends, this kind of stuff. So not to get into that topic, but I think that the overall picture is that there's been tens of thousands of people through the Facebook doors, through the groups, through consultations and that have had positive results, to the fact that, to the point where some people have recovered their children. And then, of course, tens of thousands have improved the quality of life of their children.
What do you think is the difference between the improvements and the recoveries? What could be learned from that to make the percentage higher?
But time, dedication, you don't get autism overnight. It comes on over a period of 6 months, a year and a half, something like this. And then by the time you start treating your child for autism, you've probably done every other thing under the sun, like I did. And then your kid's 10 years old and now you start. Or, you do it for 5 or 10, maybe 5 months, 6 months, something like that. And it wasn't full recovery. Now I'm going to go try this other thing. They call it like the whale watching, You're looking at the whales on the side, then you're running to the side. So they're going back and forth. So if somebody was to stay the course, and the parents that typically recover their kids is somewhere between 28 and 36 months, somewhere in that region.
Okay. Interesting.
And some have gone faster. I mean, I had one girl in one of my Autism One presentations, and she was number 113 or 112 recovered. Her name is Rachel. She was 10 years old. She actually presented in my presentation about why you should do this and how you should recover your children. So that's, that was, I think it took her about 3 or 4 months. It was very, very quick.
So with a positive experience in your own case, I mean, with your child's case, how did that morph into helping other people?
I had already had a clinic in Mexico with a hyperbaric chamber and IV chelation and ozone therapy and neurofeedback and therapists doing ABA and Sunrise and all that kind of stuff. I already had that going on.
Okay.
But the recoveries weren't really happening. Yeah, kids were getting better because we were, bringing in doctors and doing diet and all this kind of stuff, but in supplements and these labs, these overpriced labs for no reason. And then, and then when I saw that it really wasn't happening, it was just kind of like you get to this point where like now all of a sudden I'm spending a bunch of money, but I'm not getting where I want to be. And then that was where I told you I had this frustration. That was from 2006 into 2010. And then chlorine dioxide came into my life, and then one after the other, parents would say my kid lost their diagnosis, or so I sent an email, oh, a kid lost their, and then all of a sudden it was one after the other after the other. And then we had a foundation in Venezuela where we were able to work with 1,000 people at a time. And then in the next 6 months, when I went back to Venezuela, right in that one group alone had 28 recoveries. Just of, and in Venezuela still at that point in 2011, they still didn't have a lot. It wasn't as bad as it is obviously now, but there still wasn't an excess of things that you could get. It was still hard to get things into the country and stuff. But they had chlorine dioxide, they had a basic diet, not a lot of glyphosate. So they were able really to do the protocol, unlike many people in the U.S., because they have so many options of so many, miracle treatments that they're running back and forth.
Right. So it's persistence and focus maybe is one of the main differences?
I think for sure. I think so for sure.
Okay. So how did you develop it after that? Did you go to Venezuela? Were you living down there for a while?
No. But I traveled there with frequency. I mean, every 6 months I went.
You were still centered in Mexico? Yeah,
still in Mexico, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Because the clinic was there and everything, so that was pretty much the center for everything. And then I would travel and do conferences and the likes.
Right. And when you founded the clinic in Mexico, was that pretty much centered around homeopathy, or what kind of clinic was it? It
was never centered around homeopathy. Actually, the homeopathy came on sort of towards the end of my biomedical stuff and right before the chlorine dioxide stuff, because I was really quite certain that homeopathy was this was going to be it. So I went in to do homeopathy, and as I was in homeopathy school, this was happening. And then I kept trying to drop out of school after every final exam. I'd tell myself, okay, I'm really going to drop out now. And then the director of the school was like, no, just stay. It'll be good. You'll see. And then after the second year, I'm like, fine, forget it. I'll just stay the third year. I mean, once you've, done 2 years, what the heck is 3? So I stayed, but I really saw the lack of capacity for homeopathy to cure something so dysbiotic that is autism. I mean, there's so much distortion. There's so much wrong in the body that these frequency remedies that come, from Hahnemann's time in the 1800s. I mean, they had clean water, clean air, clean food, and now everybody's toxic. Everything's toxic. I mean, just breathing on this earth, you don't have a chance, not having all this toxicity. So when you send in some frequency remedy, you got to be pretty certain that that's really the right frequency. And I just didn't see it happening. And now we were doing cases in my final year too, and watching people kids with autism coming in and then seeing how they were treating the cases was heartbreaking. I mean, just say, don't drink the milk anymore, lady. Just say it. And they don't say it, because then they say, oh, well, you can't say it. And you can't say, if somebody's about to jump off a bridge, how can you not say it just because you're not the owner of the bridge or you didn't build the bridge?
Well, so you were saying that you weren't allowed to give them advice on diet at that point?
Not at all. Mm-mm.
Wow.
You were just allowed to give them the remedy that fit their complaints, basically.
So with no change in lifestyle, the results are going to be really limited, right?
They were, and the people had come back, and the kid was still not sleeping, and it was bad, very bad.
Wow. Yeah. So how did you learn about the lifestyle and diet changes and stuff after you discovered MMS?
Well, the lifestyle changes were already happening. So chlorine dioxide, I was already doing biomedical intervention since my son was diagnosed in 2004. So we had already taken away gluten and casein, and then we were still doing other dietary changes. I did grain-free and then eventually fruit-free, and then, so that was always happening.
And you saw little improvements after each change, more or less?
He always did better with dietary improvements, of course. Sleep was better, eye contact was better, and this kind of stuff. But it was still overall not a lot of improvement. But of course, we were not treating the pathogens with the exception of Candida. That's the favorite for these people. They give a lot of supplements and Candida stuff,
Okay. And when did you discover the dreaded topic of enemas, which is terrifying to most Western people?
Well, yeah, but I mean, okay. So I've always been always kind of a colonic person. Every January, every June, going for my 10 days of fasting colonics. Yeah. So I always knew that was good. And then one of the kids in Spain in March of 2011, I was working with the father a lot, and one of these other people who was selling chlorine dioxide in Spain was promoting enemas for that. And the guy was getting these long worms out. And the kid, every time he would get these worms out, was happier, healthier, talkative, and less autistic. And within 2 or 3 months of enemas and oral dosing, the kid was fully recovered. fully recovered. So that made a big difference. And of course, everybody's like, I want what he's having. So the kids were recovering quicker and faster at that point because they were, it was one like WhatsApp group of these Spaniards that I was working with. And then, everybody was kind of following his lead at that point because his kid was like catapulting out of autism faster than with just the oral dosing.
The connection between the gut and the brain used to be obviously self-evident in every, even the medical people were putting enemas in the Merck manual for schizophrenia up to like the 70s sometime.
72 when they got this Miralax junk, and now of course it's so much easier just to make you move your stool, but it doesn't fix any of the problems.
No, it doesn't get to the cause, which is a perfect business model.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you were getting more and more detail, I guess, refined on the... When you say biomedical, you mean changing basically lifestyle habits to create medical changes, right?
Sure, yeah, because you're doing diet, you're doing some supplementation and certain things and things to kill pathogens, but they were still not doing them correctly. That's why most of the children, that they go when the parents spend tens of thousands, not hundreds of thousands, and their results are really marginal.
Yeah, but they're officially approved, so everybody says that's what you have
Exactly. That's why people, when they say like, oh, but you're being attacked, well, they only attack people that are effective.
Yeah, that's true. If you were doing something that was actually hurting people, they would want to keep you around to show how bad it was.
Yep.
So, interesting. So, as that expanded, I guess people started hearing about what you were doing, and you were one of the more experienced people with this whole protocol.
Well, by then, because I was working with many different people and many different groups that I was, had many people to learn from, because you were seeing what's happening and how to dose and how to break up the drop and all this kind of stuff. So you went up low and slow and everything was more understood, of course, now as time was passing. But there were so many people, like Venezuela alone. I mean, there were like 1,000 people in this one foundation. So that was, just something really easy to go through. And then, of course, there was that sweetheart period where everybody was like, wow, cure for autism, great. And then, of course, that was more in the Spanish-speaking world. And then, of course, there's this group called Linca and Great Plains Labs, and they just sell a bunch of supplements that are useless and a bunch of labs that are useless. I mean, all the kids have metals, all the kids have pathogens, all the kids are dysbiotic. So, I mean, why are these parents in Latin America, $300 to $600 could be actually a month's salary. And they're taking that from these people every few months. It's just heartbreaking to see. And the parents are buying all these supplements, and the kids are marginally better, if at all. And I just watched it happen for too long. And of course, when you see why you get attacked is because they have to protect their business. And that was the first time I really saw the evil. I mean, I guess I didn't see, my son was vaccinated. That's evil. But then to see this evil too is like, wow, we don't even take care of our own, because one of the people who owns that group is a mother of maybe a Rhett's daughter or something like this. But I mean, I don't know. I don't understand how you can take advantage of your own. We just have to do better all the time and always looking for. That's why my protocol, I say it's always evolving. It's not exactly the same as when the book was written 6 years ago. It's evolving.
Well, I mean, a lot of real science is trial and error and observation, right?
Well, and we learn along the way too. I don't think that any of us, by the time we're born and we die, we definitely are collecting a lot of experience along the way, and that should improve.
Right. Yeah, you're supposed to be observing patterns and see why things appear to work, and then setting up tests to see if that's true.
I'm being chased by the sun. Sorry.
Oh, that's okay. That's okay. So, you were involved in the process of refining it and making it better.
Still happening. Still happening, and I think it's happening faster. This past 8 weeks that I've been under attack by anything from Yahoo, Google, YouTube, all these, whatever these big tech companies are, there's been 8 recoveries in this period of time. So it's kind of like saying keep going and urging to go on, because it really is happening.
Feedback.
Absolutely positive feedback from the universe, and God, whatever anybody thinks that is, but I mean, this is really what's happening. And of course, the negative trolls and this bought and paid for big pharma media, NBC or whatever the talking head of the day is, they have an agenda, and their agenda is to work for big pharma, who is paying their salaries by buying their advertising. Well, chlorine dioxide makes nobody rich.
When I was first looking into Jim Humble, because that was what I found out about him and MMS at the same time, and I think the thing that made it clear that it wasn't something bad was the experience in Africa. with malaria, right?
Yeah.
That was his first experience too, I guess. How he thought of trying it, I don't know, but
because people were dying, and he said, "Well, this cleans my water, so I'm going to go ahead and give it to these people."
You know, the biggest discoveries, everybody else after they're made says, "Wow, that was obvious. Why didn't I think of that?" And it must be really frustrating for the poor authority figure people, because they've already certified that this is totally safe for water purification, and then you can drink it, and it's fine.
They're paying big money to have people say that we're crazy and that it's bleach. They're paying big
they're
money.
hoping that they've destroyed common sense enough so that you will never put these two things together and see something wrong with the picture, right?
Yeah, well, common sense is disappearing, my dear friend.
Well, I talked to one of the people in Africa that was involved in the original malaria demonstration, or hopeful experiment, I guess it was at the time. And he confirmed to me that, yeah, everybody totally recovered in one day. And I think overnight, with 1 or 2 glasses of water, and that was the end of it, purified water. And so the normal attitude on malaria, I think, is that it's manageable, right, which is the medical model, but it's not curable.
Let me tell you, this statistic that I looked up the other day, every 30 seconds, one child dies in Africa from malaria. So I think that gets rid of most of us useless eaters. I mean, and if that's their plan to depopulate the world, they're doing a good job there.
I'm sure that's part of it. Yeah.
Has to
so
be.
Anyway, so what happened is, I guess the Red Cross was at that test, and there were all these malaria people were there, and they were just saying, "Okay, I'll drink the glass of water and see what happens." And the next day, close to
they come
or
back
at,
and do a blood test. Yeah.
100% were free of the parasite that
Correct.
defines malaria.
Correct.
And the Red Cross was there, and then they came back later and said, "What test? We were never there. It must be a fake." And then the guy that I talked to, which we probably shouldn't name, said he's not going to talk anymore publicly because they said they'd kill his family, which is the government seal of approval that they know what you're doing is really good.
Yeah.
So once I saw that and thought about the fact that, oh yeah, it's approved for cleaning water and apparently is safer than sodium hypochlorite, which is what most places use, then, and that's another question. We have like 10 hours of stuff to talk about if we go fast, but just to hold it down, since most of the communities in America, and I think they're actually required to do this in most places, are putting bleach, like the people complain about on TV. They're putting bleach in the water for people to drink, right? And they're the ones who are actually doing what you're being accused of. What would, other than business concerns, what would stop them from switching over all the communities in America to purifying their water with sodium chloride instead of sodium hypochlorite?
So when I started getting attacked, Richard, I said, why am I getting attacked so strongly? Yeah, I'm more effective. The protocol is more effective than anybody else treating autism in the world today. We're having, nobody's dying, thousands better, hundreds recovered. What's the problem here? Really, what is the problem? And then Dr. Stephanie Seneff comes into my life, and she says, chlorine dioxide destroys glyphosate, gets rid of glyphosate from your body. And of course, glyphosate is the brainchild of the globalists. This is the thing to get rid of and depopulate the world. So
it's in the polar ice caps now.
But now all of a sudden you open your eyes and you say, okay, this stuff for like less than pennies on the dollar, you can cure malaria, you can destroy glyphosate, you can extend the life, you can cure autism. Autism, cancer, fibromyalgia, chronic fatigue, depression, anxiety, you know where I'm going. All those things you can take care of with chlorine dioxide, and it costs like $25 for the bottles, and they last you like 6 months.
Yeah.
So who's getting rich? Not the people that make it. Who's getting rich? Not the people that take it. I mean, it's just absolutely a win-win situation. They're not up for that. They absolutely want you on their pharmaceutical drugs for the rest of your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Not you, but you know what I mean.
Right, exactly. So there's no reason other than that they couldn't switch over all the communities in America to using that instead of bleach, right, for purifying the water.
Of course, they could. It's absolutely very, very inexpensive. And the way that it breaks down, like I said, it breaks down to water, oxygen, table salt, and just absolutely clean.
Now, what about the people, and there are a few, that are sensitive to salt? Is there any way that they can get around that being a byproduct or not?
Sensitive to salt?
Yeah.
We have sodium in our bodies. I mean,
Right, not sodium, but sodium chloride.
It activates out, so you end up with just the chlorine
pure
dioxide.
Sodium and
the pure chlorine dioxide, because they activate
okay.
out. Yeah, it activates. And then Andreas Kalker uses a gas method. So he just collects literally the chlorine dioxide gas into water. So it's the purest form. So I guess at that point you would use that.
Which form is that?
You put the drops into a glass, basically, and you put it into a big, like a big, I don't know, big container, and then you close it, and then in the morning, the gas is trapped in the water. So the color from the chlorine dioxide, the color reverses from being like yellow in the glass to clear water. It goes into yellow water and then clear in the glass. So it's already dead. The gas outgassed into the water.
But didn't Jim's book say that you have to use it before it ages out or becomes, not strong or how? If you start with the 2 bottles, okay, you get the sodium chloride and the acid, like the hydrochloric acid for activator, and you put them together in equal quantities, drop by drop, according to what protocol you're using for what your situation is.
Okay.
And then you've got these little drops at the bottom of a glass container, and in a certain amount of water. And I think I remember reading in Jim's book that you don't want to let it sit too long. You'd like to make it fresh every time. So how does that go together with what you were just saying about overnight and stuff like that?
One thing is the gas that's trapped. That's called CDS, totally different. And then chlorine dioxide is the drops that Jim calls MMS. And it's 1 drop plus 1 drop for 1 minute makes 1 drop of chlorine dioxide, or MMS, however you want to say it. Right. What we do is we put it into a bottle of water, and we dose out of that bottle equal portions all day long. The chlorine dioxide, we've measured it. It lasts up to 72 hours at 3,000 parts per million. So we're always looking for parts per million, and they didn't go down over 72 hours. So there's no reason, if you have a good seal on your bottle, that you cannot use it over a period of 1 day, 2 days, something like that.
So you found that caution was not accurate.
It's not. We've tested it. I mean, I love Jim. I absolutely love Jim, but I mean, we've tested it, and it works perfectly fine.
So it's much more convenient if you can make a whole day's doses at one time.
Not just is it convenient, Richard, but you can also break 1 drop into 16 equal parts. I mean, how do you get 1/16th of a drop? How do you do it? Well, you got to put it into a bottle of 16 ounces, take 1 ounce 16 times a day.
Right. Okay. Oh, so you do 1 drop of each, put it in so many ounces of water, and then don't use the whole thing.
Yeah, you take X number of doses a day of 1 ounce or something like that.
Right. Neat. Okay. So I guess one of the questions is, when did you start? Well, let's go back one step first. You were in Mexico last time we talked.
Yes.
What we were talking about.
Yeah, Mexico.
Here. All right. So if you're in Mexico and you're not in the U.S., what started the resistance and the people attacking what you were doing and stuff like that?
Well, we were making big gains. So now there's people in more than 76 countries around the world using chlorine dioxide to treat and cure autism, which at some point they stop seeing you as a little person, and they start seeing you as something they have to attack. And I don't know if you're following Aaron, the health nut. I mean, there's 80 some doctors who have been murdered, basically, or some mysterious deaths. Because, like Dr. Nick Gonzalez, I mean, he was curing cancer naturally, alternatively.
Right.
Just one of many geniuses, Dr. Bradstreet, for instance, people that were actually making a difference in the lives of people that had illnesses, disappear, mysterious, double bullet suicides, this kind of crazy stuff. So that's basically
and it's
what
over
happens.
100. It's over 100 now.
Oh, God, that's terrible. Terrible. Yeah. But that's what it is. If they don't stop you this way, what they're doing to me now, they stop you with a bullet.
Right. So it really brings up a lot of strategy questions, because most people thinking of that would say, well, I just can't do this anymore. It's too dangerous, right? I mean,
what do you do, Richard? What do you do when you've been gifted recovery of children that didn't have speech before? They had no voice. And now they say, I have done so many interviews with parents, or even during my consultation talking to the kids, and they're like, oh no, the enema, I feel so much better afterwards. Oh, I dosed myself. oh, when I was taking chlorine dioxide, oh yeah, and now I'm totally recovered. I feel great. Oh, thank you so much. Oh, I got a girl. She started talking with the chondroitin sulfate that we have, and she sent me a video the other day. Hi, Carrie. I love you. Like, really sweet, you know? I mean, but she was totally nonverbal before. I mean, so what do you do? Should I shut her up? Should we just, turn it around?
That is the strategic question right now, is that, okay, with all this positive feedback and the fact that none of us are here permanently anyway, and the point is to do as much positive that you can while you are here, how do we maximize the reach and not fall prey to being totally silenced?
And that's where it's going right now. So I don't know. I mean, maybe if Trump does turn this around, because a lot of us had to send in things. I've been taken off of PayPal and Yahoo and all these different ones. What's going to happen? There has to be some freedom of speech protection. I mean, as an American, I would imagine that to be the case.
Up to now, and Trump could have acted on this 2 years ago, but there is a sign that he's saying directly now that he's going to do it. And we just have to see if that actually happens or not. I hope it does. But in the meantime, and is the sun about to attack your eyes? It looks like it's moving.
It's going down at least now, so I'm kind of...
Okay. All right. So hopefully he will. But in the meantime, until that works, I'm observing what the media is doing and the powers and the authority of the power structure versus what Trump is saying that he's about to do. And the response so far is accelerate the censorship while he's promising to stop it. And it's like a race, a race of chicken or something to see who gets to the end first.
Yeah.
And so the best way to, I'm looking, we're obviously not on YouTube right now. We're on Brighteon and some other private channels with a link to YouTube that hopefully doesn't get shut off. And so I wonder how effective the sarcasm approach might be to help. The other thing is, it would be nice if it was possible to set up some physical centers, like we were talking about before, that didn't get attacked and eliminated. And I'm wondering if those should be, like, for example, Jim, maybe it wasn't Jim, but his followers came up with this idea of having a church. What do you think of that approach?
Yeah, it happened. I went to the Dominican Republic, and the idea of the church was just to protect people that were using chlorine dioxide. It was not a religion or anything. Not even close to religion, was it? It was just about, the sacrament being chlorine dioxide and protecting the people so they didn't end up in jail, because that's basically, the persecution at this point. It didn't really work. It didn't really work. This guy Daniel ended up in jail because he sold it.
They just attack anyway, right?
Exactly. There's no rules for people like us. There's only, there's no rules. Let's just be honest. There's no rules.
Right.
We're the ones that are getting censored without any warning. Our Facebook groups are coming down without any warning. I lost my email without any warning, which is fine because now I have my own server and that's safer. But, they're just doing whatever they want to do. And you see the power of them, that they can do whatever. They just flip a switch and you're gone.
Right. And this is really a bigger question for chlorine dioxide, but also everything else that's helpful to life.
Right. Of
has
course.
The same question right now. Mm-hmm. How do you prevent it from being exterminated? And it seems really worth looking at. We need to come up with really strong, not just defenses, but advances that can spread, not just maintain.
Well, if it's not us, who's going to do it? And if it's not now, when are we going to do it? Like Dr. Seneff says, in 2032, 1 in 2 children born in 2032 will have autism. And then there's these crazy people that chase me down, and they're like neurodiversity people. They don't have autism. If they have an autism diagnosis, it's incorrect, because the autism that we see every day is a 23-year-old in a diaper smearing feces on the wall and screaming in pain 24 hours a day.
Right. It's not too hard to recognize.
It's not somebody with your Facebook and Twitter account that goes out with their friends and drinks coffee at Starbucks. That is not our autism. That might be.
So why are people like that attacking you? What's that connection?
Because somehow they've been told they were autistic, and they're couldn't be any further from autistic or the autism we know.
Well, even if they were autistic, why do they want to attack you?
Because they think that it's beautiful or something. They think that it's great, just another way of being or thinking or something. And now they're kind of crossing over with pride. And I mean, it just gets even, it doesn't even, there's no understanding to what's happening.
The goal is to make every kind of mental illness normal and protected. And I guess they're trying to do that. And
not protecting them, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's amazing. So I think it's not just the problem that the authorities want to shut down anything that's good. It's the fact that they're getting the general population to do it for them.
Right.
Right.